Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, you did enjoy the coffee break and you did find the opportunity to go through the list of participants and you were able to chat maybe with one or two or even more people because that's also what it's all about today, to catch up with one another. Well, happy, delighted, I can even say, to introduce to you Marwa Debaye. We are going to meet her, and maybe you know her because of her expertise and research focus on passive, carbon neutral, low tech vernacular methods. She is architect and biogeometry practitioner, a bachelor degree in architecture in Egypt, a master degree in environmental planning and design, PhD in conservation of vernacular architecture and energy effective buildings from Lund University. And actually, Mama, good morning, still good morning to you. You are associate professor at Malmö University. Marwa, delighted that you found time to be with us this morning, and we are all ear. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. A pleasure and honor to be with you here today. I tailored my talk today around vernacular architecture, and we will see how circularity, that is on the a hot topic now in the building sector, how it is rooted actually since centuries in vernacular architecture. So today I will be talking about three main issues: how vernacular architecture was mainly built on circularity, and how we are actually more or less reinventing the wheel. We'll touch upon what we call now dark circularity, how we look at circular design in architecture, and some of the challenges and future prospects with circular economy and circular design. But I will happy to take you to a quick virtual trip to Egypt, where it all started, not being biased because I'm Egyptian myself, but because it's the oldest civilization on earth. So we can see that circularity is actually embedded since long. Let's start with vernacular circularity. Vernacular communities was designed and built based on adaptation to local resources, trying to maximize the use of whatever is available around, trying to cope with culture needs, social norms, with the local economy, and with the local resources in an efficient way. If we always talk about sustainability, we say like sustainability is sitting on three pillars: the environmental, the economical, and the social. And actually the three is embedded in how vernacular settlements were designed and built since long. It starts with the selection of the site. Like when vernacular communities start to build their settlements, the important thing is to choose the right place where there's potential to start this kind of sustainable and resilient community. We talk a lot about sharing economy. This is actually a main thing that vernacular settlements built their life on. They share everything together. They share resources. If a family is cooking a meal today, it will share it with their neighbors, and so on and so forth. You can't find like a family owning something and it's not shared or not used by another family. They commute both on the street level and also on the rooftop level, where they can kind of exchange goods and exchange resources. Someone is owning a farmland, someone is having a craft workshop, so they actually exchange what they have among each other. And when it comes to coping with the climate and using natural resources, vernacular buildings actually manage to meet harsh climate conditions. It's either, if it's like in Egyptian context, it's a hot, harsh climate, or it's maybe in the northern Scandinavian part where it's harsh, cold climate. People actually, indigenous communities manage to match their needs when it comes to comfort levels in their buildings, trying to make the best use of resources, as I said, and they actually managed to excel with this to show us a very kind of humble, minimalistic expression within architecture and also urban context. Due to the fact of using a lot of passive means, low impact strategies for accommodating the needs for cooling and heating, ventilation and daylight, vernacular buildings outcome are mainly less energy demanding, and they are actually more environmentally friendly than what we call energy efficient modern buildings, as I said, due to the fact of relying mainly on passive means. One example is like using multiple strategies for passive cooling. They can use a staircase as an air shaft for daylighting, and also for cooling, and also for ventilation as well. They use different means to make the best use of natural resources around them from the sun and from the wind. Even when we talk now about renewable energies and we use a lot of solar panels and wind turbines and many other renewable energy systems, it is actually the ideas and the know-how of it started centuries back in vernacular settlements, where they understand the potential and power of using natural resources. Everything in the vernacular settlements is a kind of a precious resource, even animal manure. They managed to use it as fuel. They produce something called dung cakes. They leave it to bake in the sun, some baked, sun dried, and then they use it as a natural fuel for the ovens and for many other purposes. We are talking about now low impact also strategies when it comes to reusing our like solid wastes. It's still something that we can see and observe even until now in vernacular settlements. They use the organic waste as also compost and fertilizers for their lands or for the soil. Nowadays also we talk about upcycling. It is something that they used to do it as a natural thing. If there is a house that is demolished, maybe parts of it can be reused again. For example, here we can see like this kind of ornamental thresholds on doors. They just, if a house is about to deteriorate or it's time to like demolish it and build a new house, they just make the best use of out of the existing resources in that house. For example, here they managed to use these wooden pieces in constructing a new door. When a house is about to be demolished, the material itself is easily used again, either as a building material or it can just be like a landfill again, because it's a soil that comes back to the soil. So if this is a building made out of mud brick, simply you can just add water, remix again the same old bricks and cast it back to new bricks. Every single source had multiple purposes and multiple use. There is no waste. Actually, we can claim like it's a zero waste communities. If there's a palm tree, palms are used as food resource, palm dates, I mean. The trunk is used as a primary beams for construction for roofs and also for walls and for foundations and floors. The secondary beams or the palm reeds can be used as secondary beams and reed mats that also can be used as flooring. They can also weave from the shell of the shell of the palm tree trunk. They can use it in producing different kind of domestic elements like baskets or ropes and different other elements. And even can be used also, like as you can see here, indoors. Also palm reeds and leftovers from the wood trunks can still be used in another elements. One single material can produce a lot. Like here, it's just earth, clay. They managed to produce like interior furniture, they have bread oven, a cooker, like shelves, lockers, and even storage for their like crops, like rice, wheat, oat, and many others. It is part of their daily life. Like you cannot separate how they live in a circular way from their day-to-day activities. A family is baking today, as I said, they can share with others. A family have a farm, they can have olive farm, they can press the olive juice, like olive oil juice, and then they share it with other people. Someone is casting bricks, he can cast for his neighbor, and then they share all the resources together. And when it comes to like a deeper focus and emphasis on building techniques, they actually try to adapt whatever kind of material around and try to innovate building technology that suits this material. So there is no size fits all in vernacular architecture or vernacular uh, design and construction methods. They just look around and see what is available, try to adjust it to their needs, and try to develop the techniques that is possible to sustain and to cope with the, as we said, with the climate, with their needs, and maximize the use as much as possible of the material they had. We always talk about gender and we talk about like social equity and all these kind of things is still embedded in vernacular architecture. It's either a gender role or it's either a skill that you use in order to continue working in harmony and in collaboration together to produce a final sustainable building outcome. It is a part of their daily life. When they build their even buildings, it is they also collaborate together, like neighbors. They gather and help each other to construct a house. And then when a family settle in and then another family needs a new house, again, all the neighbors, they will help and like give hand and support, either with resources or with time or with like whatever kind of help and support they can give to each other. So we always look at vernacular settlement as something like it's affordable way of construction. It is environmentally friendly. It's economical to build. It has minimal impact on the environment. It is resource efficient. Many like positive aspects about vernacular settlements and a lot of lessons to learn from it when it comes to circularity. But why nowadays we are not able to use this on a wider scale? So where is the problem if there is a lot of potential in this kind of knowledge? Majority of the knowledge is actually disappearing, and many people are not interested anymore to live in these vernacular settlements, and they leave it as ghost towns and villages, and they just migrate and start to live in modern buildings that is sometimes ill-adapted to the climate. They are not that environmentally friendly or not even social or culture friendly. So simply, some of the vernacular settlements are like demolished and they can just move away, as I said, like leave their old towns and villages as ghost cities, or they can just demolish part of it and they construct the new houses with the kind of modern way of living, using industrial bricks, using cement, using steel, using all these kind of industrial materials. Or said enough, some of the settlements are just totally swept away with tide of concrete blocks, so they don't exist anymore. And all the knowledge are disappearing. And it's not only the physical part, but it's also the non-physical part when it comes to craftsmanship, like all this knowledge that is kept with seniors are day after day disappearing. They die and the knowledge is dying with them. The new generation are not willing to inherit this kind of knowledge and experience and transmit it to the next generation. So the know-how of the basic principles of circularity is actually disappearing. And there is now a kind of a fracture between what we call environmentally friendly, like, as I said, economically to build, adaptive, and the modern way of living, which somehow in these vernacular communities, they look at the how people live in big cities, and also they have the Western model as a kind of a fancy model and how we should live. This is how it is kind of exported to them as a way of thinking. And on the other hand, the Western societies now are trying to go back to the essence of circularity and trying to bring all this kind of inherited knowledge up front and trying to use it and adjust it to our modern needs. And in many times when we try to apply some of these principles of vernacular knowledge, it ends up by doing just mimicking. So we don't go deeper into the essence, we just go into the look. We can use natural materials because it look it looks green, it looks environmentally friendly, but we don't go deeper into the know-how knowledge that is actually the main principles of what we call now circularity. Some examples from Egypt still. Some of the architects were trying hard to learn from all these kind of vernacular essence and trying to adapt and adjust and using some of these concepts of like using passive systems, using natural materials, like here, for example, some stone, unfired bricks, trying also to use some of the architectural forms that is climate friendly, using some of the passive principles like orientation or thermal mass, and so on and so forth, from this passive cooling and like shading and many strategies that is very close to what we call now this low impact and environmentally friendly strategies. Like here with this pigeonholes is actually inspired from vernacular architecture used here as passive cooling systems and for natural ventilation. Another example of using only local resources, that is actually the digging soil from the site. They managed to build this multi-purpose building, which is residential and office building for a company in the Western Desert. The only industrial material they used is fired bricks just for the dome, because they were not sure that the natural clay on site would be safe as a structure. And we can see here a lot of these passive systems that is also embedded in the design, that is inspired still from vernacular architecture. Some other trials to also get some inspiration from the local context and getting some connection to the local environment, using also local materials, trying to empower the local community by learning how to build with the natural resources, bringing back this kind of knowledge, revitalize it in a way that is easy and accessible, and also a way that could be also minimalistic in using this kind of different architecture expressions, recycling some of the material like this corrugated sheets for roof covering and so on and so forth. But how about the dark circularity part? Are we able to adapt with all this kind of material waste, for example? And going back to the European context, some facts about like the construction sector: we use 1.6 billion tons of material every year. We hear now in the previous talks, like maybe 3% is able to be reused again, but still this is very minimal proportion compared to the amount of waste that we produce. So we are talking about building new, but how about the existing, and how about the enormous amount of waste that is already there from the building sector? And the problem here, that why we call it dark circularity, like with climate change, extreme events, all of this kind of waste that is dumped as landfill, it will come back on the surface with all these kind of like heavy storms and rains, and increase the percentage of precipitation. So we shouldn't ignore the huge amount of embodied energy and embodied carbon in this kind of construction waste that we have, and we are not able to sort, recycle, upcycle, or reclaim and reuse. But it's not that dark. There are some hope and some or there is a beam of light at the end of the dark tunnel. Would like to share also a project from Sweden, which the idea was to try to achieve a 6 Z's, which is zero waste, zero impact on the environment, zero indoor air pollutants, zero waste, zero cost if you do it yourself, and zero energy and zero carbon. So the idea is to try to use local resources from the surrounding environment, try to find a construction system that is possible to easily assemble and disassemble. So it's designed for reconstruction and for rebuilding or reassembly. After end of life of the building, even if we are not able to rebuild it again, or even if it's rebuilt again, the main material are used for another building, there also after many years there will have to like demolish it somehow. It can go back easily to nature as a compost, or it can be just a natural landfill. As I said, like this project is in Sweden. It's in the southern part of Sweden, particularly in Lund. All the materials are naturally resourced, and basically the main materials used are straw, reeds, and clay, and stone for the foundation. We challenge a lot of issues because it's mentioned also in some of the talks in the morning that we don't have codes, we don't have standards, and also the building regulations are sometimes hindering some of these approaches for more circular and more low impact design and construction methods. So we have to do a lot of effort in lab testing and trying to find ways and using passive techniques and also low-tech approaches, trying to maximize the use of the power of the sun and the wind in the same way as it was in vernacular architecture. This is, for example, triple systems for heating, cooling, and natural ventilation, using earth pipes, using trompe holes and green walls. In this project also, the waste management system was kind of built circular way of thinking. There is almost no waste coming out of the house. Everything is upcycled or recycled. All the liquid waste is reused, filtered, and reused again inside the house. All the solid waste are also separated. The organic solid waste are used as compost or as biogas, and the rest can be used also as like liquid fertilizers. And if there's excess of waste, liquid, either liquid or solid, it is treated and it goes back to the sewage system clean, even cleaner than the normal waste that we dump into the system. Of course, rainwater is harvested and it's reused. As you can see here, some of the like circular systems for recycling and upcycling the water. And the whole construction is based on design for disassembly. There are straw panels, compressed straw panels. Everything is screwed together. It's like Lego pieces attached together, manually done. No heavy machinery is used. So the building is constructed in I would say like the outer shell was constructed in less than 7 hours. This proof of concept is only 40 square meters. So if you are able to build 40 square meters in less than 7 hours, and this was done by amateurs, I forgot to say like this was a prototype for a refugee house. So the house is built by the refugees themselves. So they have no idea about construction methods. So they were trained to do this. And if they managed to do it in 7 hours, professionals can do it in less time. And here are like the steps for assembly of the building. And that shows like it is easy to unscrew everything back and reuse it again for a new building. Or if we don't need it, it can just be dumped as natural material on site. I think, show you a little movie for the different construction steps for this project to show you like it's possible to do it in a way that is easy to assemble and disassemble. Yeah, even if we manage to do it, but there are still a lot of challenges, and hopefully these challenges could lead to some solutions for future prospects of even more application for circular design and construction methods. To share with you some of those challenges, we cannot all the time build new. We need to rethink how we can reuse also our existing buildings. In the morning, there was interesting discussions about retrofitting and how we can use like smart materials. But I don't think what is happening now is still enough. We need definitely to have more ambitious plans to transform our old buildings and historic buildings through different rehabilitation, adaptive reuse plans to other functions to be more adaptive to our modern and contemporary needs. The process of assessment and reclaiming for using old materials is extremely time consuming. And we have seen a lot of good initiatives, and even like in Aristides' presentation, he showed this kind of platforms and database for sorting materials. But it's still not coping with the need. It's not enough still to offer this kind of catalogs or wide spectrum for choices for old materials that is possible to reuse. Still lack of standardization and how we make kind of assessment for this kind of reclaiming material, and it can be also different from one architecture firm to another and from one contractor to another. So we need some kind of harmonization for the systems we use. There's also several challenges connected to the building standards, like this latest example I showed in Sweden. It was really hard to construct this building and have a building permit for a permanent building. It is still standing for 4 years now as a temporary structure. It's not possible to have a permanent building permit. This is a huge challenge if we would like to use this kind of design for disassembly and circular construction methods. The building regulations are still very rigid, and sometimes it's not even possible to comply with them. The labor cost sometimes is a challenge, especially in Europe. If we are talking about other developing countries, it might be actually a positive part, because you offer a lot of job opportunities, but when it comes to the European context, it is of an extreme challenge. The man hour is expensive. If I talk about the Swedish also context, it is almost impossible to use a lot of labor in sorting and in kind of to be involved in any assembly and disassembly process. And finally, when we quantify our designs for reconstruction or deconstruction, there is still it's still like very indefinite sense. There are not so many recognized conventional methods on how to do this. And in short, to summarize this, if you would like to have a successful design, successful circular design process, we need a daring client and or a daring investor who is also ambitious and supportive. And we need also a skilled architects who have the know-how knowledge and how to design for disassembly and how to design for circularity. And that's an experience that hopefully will be developed in the coming years, but it has to start actually from architecture education and also from building construction education in order to have this kind of hopeful future, to have this kind of mindset that the default, that when we design a new building, we design it for disassembly and for reconstruction and deconstruction. So circularity needs a strong desire and also a will for change. And we need many actors in the building sector to step in. And we need to step in now before it's too late. So my final message from this talk is that vernacular knowledge has much to teach us on our journey towards circular practice. And definitely vernacular as a past can still serve as a catalyst for the future. Thank you so much for listening.